He's a dynamic entrepreneur at the helm of Commander AI, an AI company set to transform the waste management industry. And he's a speaker and teacher where he makes spirituality very accessible for anyone yearning for deeper connection. Big facts. He's also the host of the wildly influential Success Series podcast, bringing powerful conversations of success and spirituality, attracting very powerful guests. And as the youngest teacher at the Kabbalah Center, he's a sought-after spiritual teacher, helping create deep personal transformations, no big deal. His dynamic blend of business acumen and spiritual wisdom is a powerful cocktail. Please welcome the multifaceted, enlightened, and abundant, the handsome and disruptive David Berg. How you doing, David?
Great to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. This is a conversation I've been looking forward to for quite some time. We were kind of just catching up before we hopped on. A lot of alignment, a lot of synergy. It's crazy that we haven't formally met yet, but no better place than right now. For our listeners, in case you're not familiar, best suggestion is do a deep dive, play catch up, check out all his content, his podcast, the stuff he's got going on in the entrepreneurial world, all the things. What I think is most dynamite today, so we just dive in and have an unbelievable conversation. Before we get going, I have a little icebreaker for you. You ready for me?
Let's do it.
How important is it for you to be connected to your mission, David?
I think it's everything. I don't think my life would have much of a purpose if I wasn't. I think many people build great things, but without some spiritual footwork, framework to what you're doing, I don't think there's any meaning to it. I think you can monetize things, make a ton of money, be very successful, but at the end of the day, there's this massive gap of emptiness where the spirituality comes in. And so for me, I was born into it. It's inherent to the way that I was raised and grew up. But practicing it in my day-to-day today, again, in conversations with other people, in classes that I've taught in my own business, I don't think my life would have any meaning if I didn't have a grounding of spirituality in it.
Beautiful. I love it. I could totally relate to that. And you mentioned that you were born into it. Your parents basically run the Kabbalah Center. Is that right?
Correct. My father is the director of the Kabbalah Center alongside with my mother, who's the co-director. My grandparents founded the organization in the early 70s. And it's grown into a national, spiritual following. There's locations all over the world, as far as Paraguay and Brazil, locally in Los Angeles, Miami, New York, as you're familiar. So a lot of great things that I've gained from being a part of it. But I think first and foremost is when you're on the inside of things looking out, you can really see the authenticity to it, the truth that was bred within it. Although I grew up in it, I did resist it when I was a teenager, early in college. And I actually didn't find alignment with it. And it took me to get to a really dark place where I felt a need for spirituality, that I was then open to, pursuing Kabbalah and coming back to it. And now it's something that I can never imagine living without. But it is funny. Most people don't know that there was a 4 to 5 year gap where I didn't align with it.
I didn't know that. And thank you for sharing. But I did know that you also do other things. Entrepreneurship, we're going to get into all that stuff. You're very successful. You're building something. It's beautiful. It's disrupting. So I imagine someone that's just listening right now, they're probably thinking, how come you don't spend the majority of your time at the center based upon the family that you're born into and so forth? And you kind of just peeled back the curtain a little bit on how there was even a time where you resisted it. Why do you think that was?
Yeah, great question. I think to start on the latter point, anytime you're born into something, and we see this with the royal family and elsewhere, you're born into something, it's so imbued within you that you're just naturally going to push away from it. There's no ability to earn it yourself. You don't feel like you made any choices. It was here, this is how we operate. This is the spiritual wisdom that we believe in, and now go and do with what you will. And so I think as an Aquarius by trade, I had to push against it. I had to make sense of it on my own. And then finding my own connection to it in practice allowed me to come back to it. With regards to why do I pursue, I'd say my time is probably spent 60 to 65% on my business, and then 30 to 35% teachings, working in the center and so on. I actually think that this is the most spiritual place for me to be. In many conversations with my father, I asked him once, I said, if I were to spend all of my time in the center, would that be the right thing for me? And he said, no. In fact, the way that you can connect to the most people and have the most reach is by building your own company, achieving success in the monetary level, and then bringing all that you'll learn and gain there into the center. And that's where the most growth can happen.
Interesting. Beautiful. Love it. And something you just mentioned right there was you're very clear when you said success at the monetary level, because the word success can mean different things to different people and also different seasons in your life, right?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions, even at a young age. I always, I never thought that money was the end all be all, but I knew there was a bridge to essentially get started. So the way that I see financial success, building a company, It just gives you a baseline to be around certain people, to have a certain level of reach. And then from that point, you can choose to do with it what you will. Many people choose a path of goodness and spirituality like you do, and choose to spread that with the world. And then unfortunately, there's the flip side where you use it for, selfish reasons or egotistical reasons. So the way that I see any financial success is like, just to get in the game, just to get started, you have to achieve that. And then from there, you can choose to do what you want with your life, which is probably a paradoxical approach. I don't think many people view it that way. For a lot of people, I think it's, when I make this amount of money, my life is complete. I can enjoy it. I can spend how I want to. I can be free. For me, it's quite the opposite. I think my life only gets started when I exit my first company, when we IPO or whatever the case is.
Beautiful. There's a misconception, or maybe not. Some people think that you can't absolutely love what you do and monetize it, right? I've kind of showed that you can. So are you. But what do you say to someone that's like, you should have the spirituality on one side, and then maybe your main thing that you're not necessarily supposed to love? It might always feel like a job, so to speak. But I think there's a different approach. I think there's a different narrative where you can be in alignment, be in your purpose, love what you do, share, and also maybe secondary, make a lot of money doing so. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that your business can be the most spiritual aspect of your life. As you know, the founders, working among the highly successful people, you're dealt, either it's investors, either it's employees. You have a million opportunities to practice your spiritual teachings and all the things that you've learned, whether it's the practice of restriction. An employee, speaks back to you, an investor demeans you. How do you handle that? Do you attack them back? Do you curse at them? Or do you restrict, as we know in Kabbalah, and then treat them with human dignity, right? So I actually have seen that I get the most opportunities to practice my spirituality within the company. Whereas if I was not, operating a company or wasn't doing this, I'd probably have, many less opportunities. And so I think, and especially in today's day and age, everybody's talking about, I want to find my passion. What's my purpose in life? I think that you only find your passion and your purpose when you fully commit to something, and then it becomes revealed to you, as opposed to, I'm not happy with where I'm at. I don't like the circumstances. I wish I was doing something else. That's, as we know, victim mentality. That's saying, I don't like where I'm at, but I'm not going to do anything to change that. Commit to it 100%, and then ask the creator or be open to other options, other scenarios.
Yeah. Wow. We just dropped some big ideas, big concepts.
We did.
Okay. The powerful tool that is restriction, something that we talk about in the Wisdom of Kabbalah often. Maybe you can just explain it. What exactly does that mean? And how does using it really, really, really add value and benefit you the way that you just described?
Absolutely. So in Kabbalah, and restriction and suppression are two entirely different things. Suppression is more religious by connotation. It's, I want something, but because it says in a certain script, because it's written in the Torah, in the Bible, in the Quran, I'm not going to do this. In Kabbalistic terms, restriction is when I want something, but I understand that in order to truly appreciate and earn it, I need to create a filament of sorts. That can be, time. So if you want to react towards something, saying, I'm going to wait until I no longer feel that I need that thing, and I'll take care of it tomorrow or the next day. It can be in a relationship. If you're with your spouse, I'm not going to engage in certain things during these times. I'm going to be fully committed in other ways, but I'll put a restriction, whether it's in a sexual nature. So that's one form. In business, when you have an investor that you actively want to participate in this round, but you also know that whatever is best will ultimately manifest in your life. So you don't force that investor to come in. You don't nudge on your terms. And we get treated with these opportunities daily. But I think that the way that we're programmed naturally is, I want, I get. In Kabbalah, it's I want, I'll pause first, and then I'll get, which is very different than anything else that I've ever heard or experienced. I've seen the extremes on both ends, where it's, I'm never going to have that. I'm going to refrain from all desires and pleasures of life. Or the other end, right, which is probably worse. I want everything, and so I'm going to make sure that I have it, regardless of who's on my way or how I get there.
It's unbelievable. So good. For someone that's listening right now, it's like, if you weren't familiar, which they obviously are because they're listening to this show and so forth, but you have to test this stuff out, right? You have to be willing to put it into practice. Some of it might not be logical or make sense to you. Like, okay, so, and one of the things I love, I just wanted to add that you don't have to sign up for a marathon or do something really crazy to create this huge vehicle for transformation. As you just said, at some point later today, you're going to be presented with the opportunity to react or to pause and exercise restriction. And we get these opportunities, call them opportunities, all day long, every day. They never stop coming, right?
Right. Absolutely. They come in, and if you look for them and you're aware of them, like I know you are, and also yeah, you kind of touched on the marathon. I know it's something that you've done. I'm sure you've spoken about it in your podcast, but I'm just out of my own curiosity. I'd love to kind of hear what inspired you to do that, and maybe we can talk about it as well. But the opportunities come to you, and the more that you're cognizant and aware of them being in your life, you'll notice that it happens in every moment of life. When you're leaving the office and getting on the highway and somebody cuts off in front of you, do you try to cut them off back? Do you curse them out? Do you give them the finger? Or do you pause and say, this was the perfect opportunity for me? I take a second. Maybe I can't see what I'm gaining from pausing and not reacting, but knowing within your soul and within your heart that that moment of pause could lead to $10 million in revenue, could lead to the soulmate. And we don't see the big picture. And I think it's a perfect segue into one of the fundamental teachings of Kabbalah is that the world as we see it is not even 1% of the physical reality. We might think that we have a grasp on our lives and how we're going to manifest things, but oftentimes, the way that we are the most successful and that we achieve the things that we want is when we're aware that it's not inherently in front of us, that there's some higher force. For some people, that could be God. As we know, it's the creator that's there to conspire for our good. And by being aware of that, then the ball's not in our court necessarily. We still have to work extremely hard, but the creator is also there supporting us. And so I think, for people, and there's one of the greatest teachings of Kabbalah that I've always resonated with, from the moment that you wake up, you have to know that everything's in your hands. If you don't work hard, you won't be successful. If you don't push completely, the business won't manifest. But when you go to sleep at night, and if nothing is manifested, you have to know that all of that's in the hands of the creator. And if you did nothing throughout the day, you'd still have the same outcome.
Wow, beautiful. And so you have to create space or make room to, as we would say, let the light in, right? So you should do absolutely everything that you can, and yet that sometimes that's not enough because you have to be able to relinquish control. And it's funny because I imagine there's someone listening right now that's really into this, but they're like, wait a minute. So you mentioned if I just pause and restrict, that could lead to millions of dollars or a soulmate connection. Like how? Like how does that translate or how is that connected? How would you?
Right. Yeah, I would say because those are really esoteric and granular things that we all desire, I think. Let's take it even to the most minuscule and probably more relatable scenario. Oftentimes there's, let's use cars as an example, because I think that's one of the most frequent ones. You were about to get a ticket at a parking spot. Like I've seen this happen a million times. The car in front of me was ticketed. The entire row on the street was ticketed, but I was able to get to my car just in time before, the street cleaning ticket hit my car. So it's little things like that that we might take for granted. We might just say, okay, I just got lucky. But when you live on a spiritual playing field in the spiritual realm, you realize that all these things that happen are actual miracles that are experienced in your life. Not everybody avoided having a ticket that day. You were the one car. You might look at it as an anomaly, but when you look at it in the spiritual framework, it's too obvious to ignore. And I oftentimes say that I'm the luckiest person in the world. Although it's not luck, it does feel that way because it's like, again, the universe is conspiring for your good. And I notice when I'm in a state of non-restriction, when I'm reactive, when I don't treat others poorly, that's when the tickets come in. That's when your car gets nixed. That's when people are angry at you. That's when your employees are unhappy. That's when investors are calling you. Whereas when you are restricting, it's like everything's in flow. So I'd say for people that are listening and wanting to practice this in real time, try a day of restriction, meaning pausing the things that you want inherently, and then see if you feel more in flow than you did the day before. And if not, then I'd say you probably weren't restricting hard enough, and then try it again the next day.
You articulated that so beautifully, and I want to acknowledge you because you just made that digestible and accessible for anybody that's not even familiar with the terminology. And sometimes the coincidences, really nothing's coincidence, are too obvious to ignore, right? And it's great because I would just add this for anyone that's okay, let me practice. You might not see the miracle or the blessing in that instant, but it might be tomorrow morning. All of a sudden, right? You get a phone call, someone that needs exactly what you have to offer or similar
Right.
stories where you meet somebody in the elevator, but they're connected. So have patience and continue to practice it. And don't necessarily expect right away, oh, I'm going to do this just so I get that. Kind of make this a lifestyle by restricting those temptations. And then you're more connected to ongoing blessings and miracles, though you might not know which one's connected, they all are.
Right. And that's a great point you mentioned because people, I think, oftentimes they say, like you said, let me test this. Let me see if this is going to work. The creator and the universe doesn't like when you play games with it. There's no testing here. If you don't fully believe in something, it's not going to work either. So you can't say, let me try this. I don't really believe it's going to work. You must have the certainty beforehand to even have a chance of achieving or manifesting that thing. So put that as a prerequisite to our audience here.
Yes, certainty, another big word. And then I want to come back to the marathons because you asked.
Yeah.
So certainty. To be able to achieve certainty, I think of like confidence and self-belief. Those are very nice, very cute. But then
Mhm.
certainty, totally different level of conviction. It's one of the big concepts, big ideas that we speak about in the wisdom of Kabbalah is to be able to have certainty, right? So for someone right now that's like, oh, I would love to be able to operate from that consciousness, how can you flex the muscle of certainty to begin to grow it?
Yeah, such a great, and I think also just noting that differentiator between certainty and confidence. Many confident people, but when things don't go their way, that confidence goes right out the window, right? The businesses,
Wow.
it's like, what
Yes.
happened to that Uber? You were so confident. Now you're, like, where did all of that go? Which I think is right, and we know probably many people like that. But as far as certainty goes, similarly, you used right the terminology of flexing the muscle. Like when you go to the gym, as time goes on, you can lift heavier weights. Your body's, more physique's more defined, you look great. With the spiritual muscle, practicing certainty with the easy things is how you eventually have the ability to conquer it in the harder things. So it might be easy to be certain about you getting to the office today, or about you, making a phone call to somebody that you were wanting to for a while. But then when the greater things happen in life, like the certainty when you're building a startup company, there's a million things that don't go your way on a day-to-day basis, right? And I've experienced this from the moment that I wake up until I go to sleep. Every single day, there are 30 to 40 things that feel like they will be the demise of the company. Thankfully, after years of studying spirituality and being, in this wisdom, I don't feel that, even though inherently my soul and my heart wants to tell me that I don't really resonate with it. So for our audience that is wondering how they can practice certainty, take one area of your life that you don't fully have trust in, that you're a little bit fearful of, and just say, no matter what, I'm going to believe that this outcome will be exactly how I want it to be. It might not be the way that I necessarily wanted it from the onset, but I have trust and certainty in the creator that this will work out for me the way that it needs to, right? Which is a big differentiator. Oftentimes we want things to be how we want them and we're not open to any other outcome. And I think that's where the fear and the anxiety comes in, because we're basically telling the creator, there's only one outcome that I'm comfortable with. And if it's anything else, even if that other outcome could be better for you, I'm not open to it. So I'd say create a broader scope of it and then put the trust in the creator, right? Whenever we want to control the outcomes of things, it becomes a lot about us and not about other people. Maybe you could get a phone call that gets you out of a jam. Maybe there's a partner that you weren't aware of. Maybe there's an employee that'll help you get to the next level of the company. But whenever we fix it on us, we're basically blocking off the doors to the universe and to any other scenario that could ultimately be for our good.
Like if we're going to be persistent on worrying about things, then we're basically taking creator out of the situation. Oh, I got this. Let me worry about it. And that kind of defeats the whole purpose. So it's a constant dance between having certainty, being proactive, doing everything that you can, but also being able to relinquish control.
Exactly. The paradox that we spoke about earlier. Right? And as you know, Kabbalah is oftentimes a paradox, which
Yeah.
is inherently hard to learn when you first started studying, but as time goes on, you start to believe it.
Yeah. I can't ignore a word that we've used a couple times on the show so far today, and that is greater. I always want to be very delicate about that. I know that people look at something bigger in different ways, whether that's universe, divine, source, creator, God, geez, whatever the thing is. What does it mean? What does that mean to you? That endless energy, like what does it mean to you? How would you define that?
Yeah. To me, the easiest and most tangible way to feel it and understand it, and I always share this with people, is that sense within you. When you're driving or you're experiencing something and you experience so much joy and energy and light within you, and sometimes it's unexplainable. There's nothing that happened that was really positive. You just feel overwhelmed with happiness and appreciation for life. That is the creator. So it can be, like you said, there's many definitions for it, but it's that feeling that there's something external to us that exists within us to drive us to our good, to allow us to create, that gives us all the great ideas that we have, that give us the bits of happiness that we experience throughout the day. And so I wouldn't even try to articulate it as something that's higher or above us or in the sky. Just think of moments in your life that you've experienced tremendous joy and understand that that is the creator, and that the more that you tap into that limitless source, the more those blessings will manifest in your life. So maybe not the exact answer that our audience wants to look for, but I think it's the most tangible because it's not something that you need to believe in necessarily. It's something that we've all experienced.
Beautiful. I think it's very helpful. And then, so now the big question is for somebody that wants to be able to connect to that and channel that type of energy into their life and be super connected and create more miracles, blessings. what is something that they could do, or maybe something that's been productive for you to be able to channel that energy?
Giving to others. That's the single most fundamental thing. Whenever I'm in sadness, stress, fear, doubts, any negative feeling, the first thing that I do is how can I help one person today? Whether it's calling a friend that I've been neglecting because I'm too busy, quote unquote, whether it's teaching a class, whether it's meeting with somebody that's been wanting to meet for a while. There are endless slew of ways that any of us can share with others. And I'm sure we all have opportunities that maybe we turn down because, again, we're too busy. But that is the surest and most consistent way to draw that energy into your life. And sometimes it happens instantaneously. Other times it takes a day or two. But the entire reason why we exist in this world, and again, one of the fundamental essence and teachings of Kabbalah, is that we're meant to be here to achieve a state of unconditional love towards other people. Unconditional love means I love you not because you give to me, but I love you because I understand that by loving you, I am drawing more to the source and the essence within me. And that might be a little deep for our listeners, but bridging on the gap that we were going on, giving to others, and I can't say that enough, is the greatest way to draw blessings into your life.
Love it. And they trust me, the audience, the community has the desire for the deep stuff. One of the reasons why we have
Beautiful.
today. So they want it more. I love it. So basically, giving is the blessing.
Yes, giving is the blessing. It is not the bridge to the blessing. Oftentimes, right, we think if I give, then what will I get? The fundamental thing that you need to know is that when you give, you are actually getting. The person, similarly, and I always use this analogy, if let's say you're at your grandmother's house and she wants to cook for you, or your mother and she wants to cook for you, and the joy that it brings her, that's because whether she knows it or not, when she's giving to you and providing for you, she's actually the one receiving the most. And so we take simple examples like that, and those can be transferred over to any other area of life. And again, but sometimes we experience it right away, and other times it takes more time too. But yes, it starts there.
So people are going to want to start giving more relentlessly if they listen to this. Consciously, how can you remove the agenda from giving?
Think about giving in areas that are uncomfortable for you, because oftentimes those are the areas that you don't see yourself able to receive inherently. There isn't an obvious give back from it, and start giving there first. Don't give to the people that you want something from. If it's a guy or girl that you've been interested in, and so you're going to now share with them, that's agenda sharing. Non-agenda sharing is there is nothing that I think I can gain from this person. In fact, I don't even want to spend or be around them, but I'm still going to give to them because I know that this is going to draw blessings into my life.
Love it. And something that I've learned is that the more uncomfortable of the give, the better, right?
Exactly. And uncomfortable can be something different for everybody. But what I've noticed, and I spoke with, some of the teachers in the center, it's an act of receiving for myself. So yes, discomfort always precedes connection to the creator.
So you asked me, perfect segue. You asked me earlier why I started running the marathons. I did it in a time of my life where I would consider that rock bottom. A lot of personal stuff going on. I began to outgrow Wall Street. Didn't really feel connected to it. Making money was nice, but at some point, that's fleeting. A bunch of personal things happen at once. And so, look, if I'm being honest, I didn't grow up in a very difficult childhood, like some other people did. And so I was looking for something to manufacture that would make me very uncomfortable. And I had never been a runner before. I always like to lift weights. That was my thing. But running, you couldn't pay me to run. Now I'm literally paying to run marathon. Just ran the New York City in November, which was my aim. And so the marathon arena, if you will, was me getting very uncomfortable. The training camp, 26.2 miles, the whole thing. And every time I would do it, what I know now is that I was expanding my vessel, we say that in Kabbalah, but I was expanding my capacity, right, to be able to receive more by really stretching myself and be willing to get uncomfortable. I didn't know the term vessel then, but that was the consciousness behind it. And so even now, like all the marathons are a little bit different. Like it's always a different adventure or a different reason. And so that's why I continue to do it. But I didn't know at the time, maybe specifically, but subconsciously, I was looking for ways to expand by leaving my comfort zone. And the reason why I wanted to circle back to that is because when you were just talking about giving, even like some of the teachers that have been teaching for decades, whatever, as long as you continue to push the envelope and you're always going to be tested at the new level, right?
Right.
So if you keep giving more or you get to the point where you used to be comfortable, then you push a little bit more. Or in my case, it was running marathons at the time. As long as you're pushing past that and you're doing it, that's where the opportunity for major growth awaits. Is that right?
Exactly right. And on the last mile, people often talk, right? There's like 3, 4 miles where you kind of hit that wall. Was the consciousness still similar to that, or was there some other thought? Like, I don't know, the 21st mile, the 22nd mile, where your legs give out, your arms are finished. What are you thinking? Like, how are you getting through that?
So let me just make it our language, right? So the opponent. Um,
Okay.
the voice will never be louder than it is at mile 20 at a marathon. I mean, it's demonic. It's like, it's almost funny how much of like it sounds like, just totally trying to take you off course, both literally on the marathon, but also in life. Oh, you're good, you're tired, you have nothing to prove, you could step off, just be done, whatever the case may be. You have to overcome that.
Right.
And for me, the voice gets so strong and the volume goes up so loud when I'm really, really struggling. And so what that tells me is if I have the willingness and desire to push through that, the amount of light that I can reveal or the amount of beautiful growth that's going to happen on the end of that is going to be even bigger. But to answer your question, by the way, when you get to those late miles of the marathon, I mean, physically, sure, you're a little beat up, but you hopefully trained. But
Right.
the mental component, the opponent, I mean, it is brutal. And so, but it also, like, just like in, the wisdom that we talk about, being able to resist or restrict the temptation, say, okay, yeah, I'm done. Let me quit and be able to push through proactively. It creates, one of the greatest rewards, at least for me. So that's why I love the marathons because it's not so the running is great, but it's really a metaphor for life.
Completely. And back to your point of how business can be spiritual, life, when you're living in that framework, like marathons, like anything else that you're pushing past your limits, past what's, physically logical is when the light comes in. And I think for our audience, they might, maybe our audience is not going to run a marathon. Maybe they're not going to start a company, but they need to know that in every area of their life, whether it's picking up their kids from school, whether it's going on a date, there is an opportunity to be and tap into spiritual wisdom. And that is, for me, is the most exciting thing because it's not something that you have to go and, seek or be sought out for. It's inherent in your life. You just need to choose to listen to that voice as opposed to listen to the framework of the logical mind.
I love it all. Basically, what we're talking about is being able to elevate your consciousness so that you have an awareness of a system, right? Or how to like create fulfillment or, you know, be the co-creator in your own life, I should say.
Right.
The word consciousness, I feel like it gets thrown around. It's probably close to the word awareness. It's primary, it's everything. But maybe for some of our listeners that are still trying to comprehend everything that we're talking about, you've done such a good job of explaining it. How would you define what consciousness is?
Yeah. So consciousness is different than thought. And they oftentimes get, kind of merged between the two. Thought are the millions of things that come into our mind on a daily basis, oftentimes that we don't really choose or we don't feel that we have a choice of, whether they're negative thoughts, whether they're positive thoughts, they just overpopulate our mind. Consciousness is a deeper lying state that is inherent within all of us, but only when we really, and again, all goes back to pause, when we really pause and get out of our own thoughts for a second. And for me, that can be going on a walk, that can be sitting and doing absolutely nothing for 5 to 10 minutes. You allow this, and sometimes it feels like a voice, other times it feels like new thoughts that you didn't inherently have. But it's a playing field where you're not confined to what's around you. So you might be physically in LA sitting in your office, but you have the ability to tap into something so much greater. To make it less esoteric for our audience, when you tap into consciousness, it's a state of peace. So for those of the listeners that meditate, they can probably relate to that state. If they practice other modalities, they probably can as well. But it's that feeling of wholeness and completeness within you that in Kabbalistic terms is available and accessible at any second of the day. But it requires us doing a little bit more than we typically do with our thoughts, which is, I understand there's all of these things going on in my mind. Some of them are good for me, some of them are not. Which of these should I actually be listening to? So being aware I think, is the first step to tapping into consciousness. Being aware of the thoughts that are negative and being aware of the thoughts that are positive allows us to discern between the two, as opposed to how most of us operate, where it's just a running machine that doesn't stop. And And that's most of the world. I think I saw a stat. I think it's like 48 to 50% of people experience some anxious thoughts throughout the day, which is really crazy when you think about it. We were never designed to be that way. I think it's something with all the new technology, and we're constantly overstimulated by ads and by doom scrolling. But it's something that the Kabbalists talk about that should never have been and should never have existed, and that we still have the ability to overcome. And that all starts with being able to just sit in our feelings and our thoughts, not run away from them, not try to overstimulate ourselves. And that's when that higher state of consciousness, as we call it, is able to come in.
Is it important to know where the negative thoughts come from, or is it just more important to focus on how to navigate them?
Just on how to navigate them. My father always shares with me that being simple is like the creator, complicated is not. So whenever we often, sometimes we say, but why is this happening? I don't understand why, this scenario will happen and why this didn't work out. That just drags us down a deeper rabbit hole that we don't want to get into. But to your point, we just need to be aware of it and be willing to change or have a different state of mind, but not ask the questions of why is this thought there? Where did this thought come from? Because the truth is, one, there's a million different reasons. And second, they don't really matter. Okay, I had this negative thought because I had a conversation like that doesn't get you anywhere, and we want to be proactive. We want to be able to say, okay, I'm aware I had this thought, but how do I get past it? How do I go past the anxiety, go past the depression?
Yeah, I love it. Um, Maybe one of the common things that people often say about therapy is that oftentimes they'll keep you in that and like unpack it and spend a lot of time there. Nothing against therapy. Probably a great start for people and a great tool. But
Yeah,
one of the
absolutely.
things that I really loved about Kabbalah was that it gave you a proactive formula, a way to then do something about it, to immediately start connecting to something a little bit bigger and creating fulfillment and really having a strategy, for lack of better words.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you mentioned therapy. I know many people that have dabbled in plant medicine and different modalities. Nothing against any of them. And in fact, I think that some of them actually get people to a place where they're open to consciousness, where they're open to, spiritual wisdom. So I would absolutely not say anything against those things. But like you said, the point of life, and when you're in therapy, you're able to see things maybe in a broader lens and have a deeper understanding of yourself and why you're feeling certain things. But there's no bridge to get over that hump. So you might be able to talk about something and that gets off your chest. But as life goes on, new challenges come in, new opportunities to restrict come in. And where Kabbalah works best is once you're clear on the areas of your life that you need to overcome, you have tools and principles that actually help you get there. And as you know, as somebody who's practiced, if there weren't tools to the system, it would just be a framework and a thought. But I've been to so many different seminars and I've heard so many different people speak. Whenever it's just an inspiring talk, my life doesn't improve in any way. If there isn't an action item or a tool, and hopefully we've given enough tools to our audience in this chat here. But I think that when one views their life in spirituality, it's a simple question: do I want more wisdom, or do I want an action or something that I can do to get to a higher state, to have more fulfillment and blessings within my life? And I've pushed it against it when I was younger and a teenager. I've yet to see something that has achieved similar results to that of the study of Kabbalah.
I have to agree. And you know what the exciting part for me is? I mean, you were born into it, but obviously there was a little bit of a hiatus. But for me, what's so exciting is that it never ends. There's always a new level. There's always a way to go deeper. There's always more that you can learn and begin to apply and add to your life. And I just think that's so exciting. I can't get enough, if I'm being honest.
Completely, completely. It's like you think you've reached, I guess you're a rookie and then you're a sophomore now. You're like, okay, I'm a veteran. I got a good understanding of this. And then little to know that you don't even know 1% of it. There's an endless, and then even within the teachings that there's a million different ways to interpret it, right? And then you learn something new every time. So absolutely.
I would just say this, and then we'll segue a little bit into the awesome stuff that you have going on now. One of the coolest things that I've experienced, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs and very successful listen to the show, is that when I started bringing the consciousness or the spirituality into the business, that's when everything really began to take a quantum leap, right? So whereas I used to believe in much more like masculine energy, like grind, hardest work in the
Sure.
room, that stuff's all good, but it's not enough. And when I
Right.
really started bringing this stuff in, that's when everything opened up. And when I say this stuff, like even just consciousness, like you can be building your business or doing something in a way, and then you can come back and do that same thing from a different consciousness, right? From a different mindset or different awareness. And the same thing that you were doing can lead to totally different results, and the world can just respond to you so much differently. And that's something I experienced. And I would just encourage everybody, no matter where you're at or what your spirituality is, you believe there's something else going on here beyond our logic. I think that makes you spiritual to just even consider bringing this into more areas of your own life.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah. So waste management, how, like what, like, how did that come about? Why is that something that you feel so connected to? And what are you most excited about with what you're doing now?
Yeah. So yeah, people waste management. Whenever I tell them, I just those words followed by anything else, I think oftentimes I don't think many people have a good understanding of the industry. I mean, it's that there's guys that go and pick up your trash, and that's probably the extent of it.
Right.
Right after college, I was a personal trainer in college for several years. I was doing private clients in New York. It was actually good money at the time. I was making a couple $100,000 a year as an 18-year-old in New York City, and I felt on top of the world. So that was fun. But then as I was graduating, there was a successful entrepreneur who lived in LA, and I was in New York at the time. And he called me, and I always wanted to work for him when I was younger. He said, I'm launching a new company. We're building garbage trucks. Do you want to join? And I said, well, what's the job description? Like what, can you give me a little bit more? He says, come to LA and we'll meet. And if you like it, job is yours. Flew to LA the next day. He gave me a little bit more high level. He said, this is the pay, you'll have to move here tomorrow. Are you in? I didn't ask too many questions because he had multiple exits prior, and I always wanted to work for him. So I took the job. Started as his assistant, was grabbing him coffee, some different stuff, chewing tobacco for, week after week. Didn't really have much more to the job than that. Was left almost feeling gutted and thinking that I made the wrong decision. He then moved me into sales, loved it, crushed it in sales, did 100 million in a few years for the company. And through that time, I learned that the entire industry was flawed in the sense of a sales perspective. It was all old school. It's a very archaic industry, pen and paper. Guys that have, were doing 50 to 100 million in sales annually were still tracking their sales performance and lead generation on Excel sheets and pen and paper, which is crazy. And so I saw a massive opportunity there. And I thought, if nobody else is going to build this in this space, it's a pain point that I directly experienced. I must be the one to do it. Come February 24, I left the company known as Battle Motors, which is going to sell or IPO very soon. And I started Commander AI. In short, Commander is a sales platform that's built uniquely for the waste management space. And my vision for the company and for the product was to build a tool that was new age and techy enough, but also simple and relatable enough to guys in the space. Because at the end of the day, our target customer is a truck guy who's been living in trucks for the last 30 years. They don't want AI or technology or anything that sounds fancy, very unappealing to them. But our leverage was that I was in the industry, they're familiar with me, they trusted me. And so me coming in with this sales tool is like, hey, I understand how you operate, and I built a cool tech tool that's very simple and easy to use. We launched our product just a couple of weeks ago, have already seen great traction. We're onboarding 4 to 5 customers a week. And I think we'll only grow from here, but that's kind of a high level. Happy to talk about any other specifics before break it down further.
No, I love the story. So this is yours? This is your baby?
Yeah, founded this myself.
Amazing.
Have a great team here in LA. Yeah.
Okay. So you apply the wisdom, it's a big part of your life, but you're also an entrepreneur. And any entrepreneur, no matter how enlightened, will tell you that it doesn't go up in a straight line. You're constantly faced with unpredictability, challenges, and obstacles. How do you navigate that, specifically utilizing the wisdom, and what do you love most about entrepreneurship?
Yeah, 2 great questions. Yes, no matter how spiritual you are, and I think even in 20, 30 years from now, the same will still apply. Building a company, as Elon Musk says, it's like chewing glass and staring into the abyss. It does, which I think is a perfect example,
That's great.
metaphor for how it feels. But without the spiritual tools, I think I would have quit probably 3 weeks into the business, because when I started the company, right, and I think like every young entrepreneur, it looks glamorous. I'm the founder. I'll have my own office. I'll build this great tool. We'll sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. Everybody will be happy. Little did I know, it's the furthest thing from it. I left a very good paying job to making no money, right? I don't take a salary from the business, which in and of itself is challenging. But beyond that, I mean, the challenges from employees, the challenges from investors, the challenges from keeping customers satisfied. And the fact of the matter that at the end of the day, only negative things are directed at you as the founder and as the CEO. As you know, you don't deal with any of the fun stuff. The fun stuff and the good things, everybody else can deal with, but all the problems come to you. And it can be overwhelming. But where the spiritual tools come in for me is pulling the creator into the situation. So really practically, most days, at the end of the day, there's a million things that I didn't get to. And I feel like I should have, or that I don't have enough time, or that I'm overwhelmed, or that I'm stressed. But then I go and say, you know what, creator, I didn't have time for these things. Please help me manifest them. And I have that conversation on a day-to-day basis as I leave the office, sometimes when I'm in the midst of work. And what I've noticed is that that list shrinks in half, sometimes entirely eradicates. I thought that I had to do extra due diligence for this investor, follow up with this customer. Then turns out the investor says, you know what, we've done enough due diligence. We'd like to invest. The customer says, we've made a decision and we'd like to commit to your product. So it's all these things, all these steps that you thought you had to do, but simply by handing it off to the creator, they manifest on their own, and you don't actually have to play any role in that. So that's been super magical for me. Aside from that, I think with employees, our team is really, really happy here, and we have a really great staff. I never had to hire before, and so I was really shooting in the dark, leveraging my contacts as far as what do I look for, who do I hire, and thankfully we've got an unbelievable team, and everybody's committed, excited, and just really great, right? And I don't think, and speaking with other founders, that's typically one of the hardest things to do. And I attest that to the creator, because the way that I want to operate with my own life is the same way that I run this business. And I think that my employees feel that. I think that's why they're so committed. That's why they're so dedicated. So I'd say with employees, and I'd say with not having the time to do anything. And as a founder, you never have enough time, but having a silent partner, AKA the creator, has been instrumental, from my experience in going through this.
Beautiful. When you do go through challenges and obstacles, aside from what you just said, it's also a good opportunity to really showcase your desire, right? Whereas challenge and obstacles can ruffle a lot of people's feathers, I think that you're conscious, you look kind of, even though it might be painful at the time, it's always an opportunity to even expand and showcase and strengthen your desire for the problem solving, whatever the next level looks like, right?
Yeah, there's a teaching that says when you're at your lowest, when you feel the most disconnected, the most out of touch, you're the closest that you've ever been to the next level or the next manifestation in your life. And so whenever I am in a place with complete loss and just no understanding of why I'm going through what I'm going through, I get extremely excited, because I know, and I've seen time and time again, that it might be the next hour, the next minute, but it's usually within the next 24 hours that something incredible happens. And I know that it only happened because I was in complete despair. I had no way out, and I was forced to surrender, right? Whereas if I had some control over the situation, I could do things to, manifest it or, sway the outcome one way or the other. But when I had no control over it, that's when the most light and the most blessings came in.
Amazing. I love it. Straight off the cuff, can I ask you something deep and personal?
Yeah, that's it.
So what is something that maybe you struggle with that you're working on? That's something that you probably need to correct or transform, but something that you're aware of, and it's something that you're really, conscious of and working on.
Yeah, great question. Many things, many things. And it's funny, the more that you run a business and the more that you, I think, grow and achieve in life, the more those things become exploited because you have to deal with them, right? If you're operating on a small scale, like, you can kind of get by without dealing with your big insecurities or your big darkness. For me, and it's been the most apparent in the last 6 to 12 months, it's how much, although I didn't think that I cared, but how much I care about the way that I'm perceived, the way that my image is portrayed. And I never knew that, because I always thought that I was operating at the own beat of my drum, that I was doing things because I inherently desire them. And although that's true, what I've seen in running a company is that I care so much. And it hinders me in many ways, because when you're trying to think about the company first, but you also very much care about how you're perceived, the two contradict. So it comes up with employees, how they perceive me as a first-time founder. It comes up with investors, trying to overcompensate for my age and lack of experience with other things. Thankfully, I'm aware of it, which is the first step to overcoming it. But it's something that I know that if I don't tackle and deal with today, it'll only grow exponentially. And, as people talk about imposter syndrome, for me, it would be at its peak, right? Because growing up in the wisdom, growing up, the grandson of the founder of the Kabbalah Center, there was always an inherent thought of who and what I should be. And I think that's where that deeper feeling of needing to, have approval and be perceived a certain way came from. But I have to take responsibility and accountability that I can't live my life saying, I grew up with a certain expectation of who I should be. And so therefore I'm always going to care what people think. So that's top of mind and something that I'm actively working on, but still deal with on a day-to-day.
That was real. Thank you for sharing that. And it makes sense. getting to know a little bit more about your story and so forth. And then so I guess my follow-up question to that is, did those insecurities, does that fear come from the ego or from the opponent? Or is a correction and transformation that we need to make is that something separate or are those connected?
Very much connected. Because and even when I talk to the creator, I talk to myself and I say, why do you care? The bottom line is complete ego, right? Ego is when we care that we're more successful, or we play the competing game against others, or we want to be perceived as the best at whatever we're doing. That all drives the insecurities, the uncertainty, the lack of confidence. Oftentimes you can mask it with what I call is like fake self-confidence, which is walking into a room with your head up and talking, right? We can all do that, and we're very familiar with those games. That is not real, because as soon as things don't go your way, you want to hide, you want to be at home until you overcome whatever challenge you're going through. So yes, very much hand in hand with the ego. And I think that the only way to tackle those insecurities is by first being aware of your ego and where it comes in your life.
Wow. The ability to overcome that or this lifelong transformation that you're happening, that would create, I would imagine, if you can get to that point, total freedom to be able to release the expectation of judgment or what people might think about us. It's very obvious that that's, one of the big things that's very important for you, really for a lot of people, but on your path.
Completely. I think for me, it holds an even higher weight, because if I don't deal with that and I don't overcome that, then how can I truly inspire and impact the world to the level that I'd like to? If I'm so focused on how I'm perceived, right? If I'm walking into a room and speaking to 1,000 people, but I'm worried about how they hear me or how I'm perceived, I can't share with them. I can't inspire them. It's all about me, right? So I almost see it as like a prerequisite to anything great that I will, or that I aim to do and inspire people with. I must deal with this insecurity first, which is why that's the first thing that came to mind.
That's such a good source of inspiration, right? Because when you have that awareness and then you shift from the consciousness of just the giver, meaning you genuinely just care about sharing, helping, and if anything is coming from what you might receive or how people might perceive you, then you're not really operating from that consciousness. So as
Nice.
long as you do, that has the ability to eliminate that consciousness by always making sure you're doing it, for lack of better words, for the right reasons, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah. Um, this is unbelievable, brother. I mean, we got to get you on for a sequel. There's so many stuff. I feel like we covered a lot in a relatively short amount of time. And again, I want to acknowledge you. We hit a lot of big concepts, big ideas, and you have a beautiful way of articulating them to make them very digestible for people that might not have been familiar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think although we did cover a lot, I definitely would be happy to come on for a sequel. I think we focus along on the spiritual lens and the deep concepts. I think what would be really impactful for the audience and the listeners is, how do we take each one of those teachings and directly apply it to our day-to-day life? And I know that you hear things once, like you and I said, we hear things once. There's a million deeper ways to understand it. So absolutely would happy to be back on. But I'd also say, just as maybe as an ending to our conversation here, many people, and I experienced this firsthand, when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, I think, like, you're starting in life, there's so many expectations that you set on yourself for who you should be, for how people think that you should be, for how the world, the way you want to be perceived by the world, by your family, by your relationships. For me, the most growth happens when I'm able to shut out all of that noise and solely listen to my soul and my internal desires, because those are the ones that speak the loudest. But whenever we cloud our mind with all this other nonsense, we can't even hear it. And I think that if our audience can leave and ask themselves, maybe even write it down, what do I truly desire? Not what do I think my partner desires from me, what the world desires from me, what my boss desires from me. What do I desire? And then be more in line and in tune with that. Miracles are inevitable. That all the spiritual teachings that we're talking about are great, but I think that if they start with that, the rest of it will just kind of fall into place.
I love it. And even like when you're thinking about your goals for life and you're playing big and you're thinking big, one thing I always teach is focus on not so much what you think is possible, but triple down on what you actually desire. Because what we think is possible is
Mm,
actually limiting us from what's actually possible.
completely,
Yeah.
completely.
And then real quickly, I just want to say, I love what you said before about making it applicable. 2 weeks ago, my teacher, who you know, and a bunch of the teachers there had a wedding. And so my teacher asked me if I would facilitate a bonus class at the center. And so I did. We just had a panel, like me and a couple other mentors. And the feedback was off the charts. And a lot of the students came up to me after and they said, this was really special because it's one thing to hear it from a teacher. Obviously, they're the best at it, but sometimes it's not super relatable because they're on a little bit of a pedestal. But to hear how somebody else takes these concepts and ideas and applies them to different experiences of life is very helpful. So I think doubling down on that is definitely, it makes it very tangible for people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Before we land the plane and do a little rapid fire, have a little fun. Where's the best
Sure.
place for our audience to stay in your movie, to support, to kind of maybe see what else is going on? How can they go deeper with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Instagram, I'd say firsthand, my handle is David D. Berg. I'm also doing a global tour alongside the Kabbalah Center in the coming months. For the audience who's in Brazil and Paraguay, I'm coming out there next month, end of March. All these dates are available on my Instagram. We're going to London, Miami, maybe Tel Aviv, potentially Florida. So we're going to be doing a bunch of different shows. If you're in those cities, in those towns, make sure to check my Instagram for dates and a way to sign up. Aside from that, Success Series, as you know, podcast that I host as well. Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube. Feel free to check me out there as well, or just through Greg's channel. That's also a great option as well. But yeah, super happy that I was here. Thank you for having me on, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Definitely. My pleasure. All right. Now let's have a little fun, a little rapid fire. One or two word answers. Are you ready for me?
Let's do it.
Okay. Your favorite movie?
Favorite movie. It's a tough one. Not the biggest movie guy, but The Godfather would probably be up there.
Can't go wrong. First one or the second one?
First one.
I had a
I
feeling
think the
you might
first is
have gone
always
with the
better.
third one. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, it's funny because there's pretty much like a lot of people would say, you're right, sequel's never better, but The Godfather 2 is historically known to be maybe one of those that might be, but you can't go wrong.
Right. Can't go wrong.
Okay. Your favorite workout?
Hmm. Probably weightlifting. Something I picked up at 14, 15 years old, was more of a meditation place to, detox and just be in a good state. Still love it to this day. So heavy weightlifting, headphones in, heavy music, dance music, and just in my own world with my own thoughts. One of the biggest pleasures of life.
Do you work out listening to music, silent partner, or a podcast, or maybe all the above?
It varies. If I had a really overwhelming and challenging day, then sometimes just complete silence is best. Other times I need that stimulation. I'm exhausted. Other times I use it to listen to podcasts, to talk to the creator. So depending on the mood, depending on the day.
Yeah, same. Okay, cut more. Your favorite book, or maybe one that's really been very influential for you?
Mm. I'll use one spiritual one and then one sort of general business.
Perfect.
Think and Grow Rich and The
Classic.
Greatest Salesman would be my top two. And then Kabbalistically, spiritually, um, there's so many. Probably The Power of Kabbalah would be the top from a
Classic.
spiritual lens. And then Daniel Kahneman. I mean, all of his books are great. So yeah, anybody listening, I direct them there too.
I would say for anyone that wants to go deeper or just has a good taste in their mouth right now, The Power of Kabbalah is a great, I don't know if we call it entry level, but it's a
Yeah.
great place to start, I would say.
It's deep, but it also, like we said, it breaks on the concepts, so where you can understand it, even if it's your first time and experience with Kabbalah. So I'd say starting there for anybody at any level is
Yeah.
a great option.
And Think and Grow Rich ain't shabby either. In fact, I was reading a little bit this morning.
Really,
Yeah. Well, I
but
mean, it's in the rotation. I always come back to it. It's a classic.
yeah, every time you read it, you get a new perspective, and it's funny. It feels like I almost never. I read it. I think this is my fourth time reading it, and I felt like I hadn't read it before. It's almost like most of the things, right? You're hearing them for the first time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But also it's because you're expanding so much. So when you're in a different season of life, maybe a little bit of a different conscious, you kind of respond to it differently. It's beautiful.
right. It becomes applicable in different ways. Absolutely.
Okay. Your favorite musician?
Mm. I mean, people probably know his name now, John Batiste. Just performed at the Super Bowl, sang the national anthem. But I saw him in New Orleans at Jazz Festival several years ago.
Yeah.
And I think he's the most talented musician of all time. Might be a controversial take, but I mean, he plays like 10 different instruments, has an amazing voice, and his energy is amazing. And he's also inherently very spiritual, which is beautiful too.
Probably one of the more entertaining parts of the Super Bowl, unless you're an Eagles fan.
Unless you're an Eagles fan, unless you live in Philadelphia.
Wasn't the most competitive game.
It was not. I did think the Eagles were going to win, but that was not the outcome I thought. What was it, like 40 to 10 or something of
It was
sorts?
40 to 22, but that wasn't really a good indication of how the game really went. They got some late
Right.
points, but that was a mauling, a massacre.
Right. It was a massacre completely.
Yeah. Final one, brother. This was amazing. Maybe your favorite morning ritual essential.
Mm. Talking to the creator. Prayer, talking to the creator. Just and for our audience, it can just be 5 minutes with your eyes closed, talking out loud, your thoughts, your worries, your joys, your manifestation desires. Saying it out loud holds so much power. I know affirmations are really big, but there's something unique and special about being able to just talk out loud without any immediate feedback that allows miracles to come into your life. So I start every morning like that, and then I jump into my prayer ritual, but the talking to the creator precedes that.
The best answer ever. Just curious off the cuff.
Yeah.
Is a cup of coffee part of your routine?
It is, but I try to give myself a 30 to 45-minute lag period because just like other stimulations, once the coffee gets running, then you're in go mode. When you're in that precipice of I just woke up until the coffee hits, you're in a more, what I've experienced, a more spiritual, more mindful state. And that's when the real messages can come in.
Beautiful. This was awesome. Hang out for 1 second. I want to connect to you after.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, David, for stopping by and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets today.
Thank you so much, Craig. Pleasure to be on.